Hi, it's Jeff with Cribl. In this video, Randy Corelli goes deep into the world of time zones and how to deal with some tricky ones using Cribl Stream. Enjoy this office hour style presentation where time is definitely of the essence for Randy.
And I decided to run a few quick tests in my Cribl cloud environment, really just to get more familiar with using the auto timestamp and other functions with a nicely defined real-world example. So in the ticket, the customer was saying that the time zone function doesn't recognize several expressions, and then they also mentioned that Asia-Singapore wasn't in the drop-down list. So to test it, I made a very quick sample event, took the same timestamp, and just changed it from Eastern, my local time zone, to GMT for kind of a baseline, the Singapore kind of text that they highlighted, and the actual numerical conversion for that one. Same thing with the KST and the IST. And then just a basic message here so I can tell them all apart. And in the testing here, we made a very basic auto timestamp, pipeline function. Really nothing to the filter, just looking at the timestamp field for my event and looking to set this underscore time. I've defaulted to my Eastern daylight here, so America, Toronto. And for the regex, since there wasn't anything other than just this defined field, I've just used a very basic dot star. But if you did need to apply this for any particular formats, you could really just change that expression here. And the strip time as well matches the year, month, day, hour, minute, second, and time zone format that we see. So when we look at the actual output, this one here is correct, right? It says local at 10:03:42, which does match for Eastern Daylight. GMT as well. UTC up here, say 10:03:42. In the UTC, that aligns to our GMT. The SGT, however, we see here that it actually matches back to my local time, so 10:03:42. So telling us it's using the default time zone of America, Toronto for that one. But if I do give it the +8 instead, and that was my 3 to 3A, so the same event or same time zone really. In this one now we do see that, UTC was 8 hours earlier than our previous one. Before we had 10 o'clock, now we have 8 o'clock, or 2 o'clock rather. And if we check here with the time zone item here, that same time zone does equate back to what we're looking for that time zone. So in that review, if we give it the string, the auto parsing here, or auto timestamp does not like that one. But if we give it the numerical version, then it will, the lookup will succeed the way we'd expect. For KST, kind of same thing. We got that local time of 10:03 when it had the string, but we did get this, 39822 kind of proper timestamp. If we look at that one, yeah, here you go, 39822 for this guy. Does show up, that's our KST, Asia Seoul, and that same time we expect that 10:03:42, their local time. IST was a little bit different. It didn't return mine, but you'll notice the UTC offset, it's off by 1. So it's only applied a GMT +1 here, not the offset for India. And that's oddly, if we look here for IST, there are 2 definitions for it. So Irish Standard Time, which is UTC +1, or India Standard Time, which is 5.5. So unfortunately, because of this little issue, it does look like the auto timestamp will default here to that Irish Standard Time and not India Standard Time. So in my experience, most customers that see IST, although probably just outside of Europe, do expect it to be this one. So that can certainly cause some confusion with people and some issues with timestamps that have these strings here, because clearly it's not always a 1-to-1 mapping. But again, if we give it the numerical offset, then it does return correctly. These are now different. And if we look here for that India time, right, 2422, does match our value here, 2422. So what that tells us, if we use the numbers, we're pretty well good to go. But if your events have the strings, you may have an issue. And with that one, I did find kind of 3 solutions to that problem. So, we can take a look at those as well. So the first one would just be creating additional auto timestamp items that maybe specifically looks at that timestamp timestamp string. And really just everything else is the same, except you're setting a different default time zone. So when this lookup or conversion fails, instead of defaulting to a different time, it will work for this one. And if we run this one here, and here I've set the final flag to true, because we don't really have anything else going on below it. If we look at our KST, with now the string version, these two now match. Right? We knew this was the proper timestamp for the conversion, and now this output here does align to it. So that is one way to go about it. But one problem could be, your IST. That actually is a recognized value. It just didn't give the offset that we wanted. And the other one would be with the Singapore time zone. If we're looking back at that second issue they had, was that Asia Singapore doesn't exist in the drop-down list. And when we go and look at that auto timestamp rule I created for SGT, if you put GMT +8 in here and run this, it's going to go the opposite direction. So even though it says, we would maybe think +8 would apply the same as what this one will, but in fact, this kind of applies a -8 in the overall conversion. And so here, instead of these two matching, it actually went from 10, up by a few. So that's not really the desired result. And so this one here doesn't really work. And indeed, if you look for Asia, Singapore, or even just Singapore, it doesn't come up. Even if you try one of the other ETCs, there really is no -8. Try that one. So you'd be in a little bit of a pickle for some of these strings. So instead of using those ones, the next option here was kind of just an eval with the regex extract. So the regex extract here, just mine will capture the original timestamp, just the whole value, to create that value, and then just pulls out the actual timestamp versus the time zone as two separate fields. So pretty straightforward. You would just need to adjust this for any format for different timestamps than what my test shows here. The eval function, pretty straightforward as well. Just to filter which events were coming in, I kind of gave it the list of offending strings that we need to look at. Anything else we'll just kind of leave as is. We don't bother through the conversion. And then for the value expression, we just did a simple lookup. So if our time zone equals, and here I used the string equals, and then gave it my value, right? I want +8 for SGT. I want 530 for IST. If we scroll over, we'll see I wanted 9 for KST. Then of course the default is just the time zone that the event gave us. So this works. If we click save on this one, it will actually fix all these events that they'll look great. But this doesn't scale so well. Just having to create this kind of list of ORs through this eval condition. But here our EDT was undisturbed. It's still the local time's correct. The GMT, again, the UTC is correct. But now where we had SGT, we actually see the time zone of +8. Oh, and I forgot to enable, sorry, the other eval to put the event back together. Let me shrink that one. So since we have a separate time zone and timestamp field, we need to reassemble them. So there we go. So now we had the original timestamp was SGT, for time zone now it's +08. And now these two match, 43422 and 43422. And likewise all the way down here, 39822, 39822, and 2422, 2422. So this did correctly convert them for us to the desired offsets, but this can get a little unwieldy, having to put these, ternary if condition things together. So instead, and maybe just for a little more efficiency, I also came up with just a basic lookup. So again, we just kind of filtered to the offending list just for efficiency. But otherwise, I've created this lookup file. And if we look here, it really is just a column with the lookup ID, the string we care about, and the time zone offset we want to give it. And now with that lookup, we can look at this file. We can do an exact match on our time zone field, which we've extracted, to our lookup ID, and then assign the time zone value back to our time zone field. So that will effectively change our string into our number or the lookup value. You could even change that into one of those America slash like New York or Asia slash Seoul type of strings as well. This lookup would be very flexible for that. As long as it's a valid time zone, then you're good to go. Then in the advanced settings, I did a ignore case, just in case the timestamp here or time zone was lowercase for some reason. If we run this one, again, you'll get the same results. And so kind of 3 different ways that you can solve this kind of weird problem that may come up. At the very least, decent interim solution. So I hope that was useful. Thanks for listening and have a great day.